All right, guys, it's finally happening. Today, we are looking at the Cold Steel Espada Large in polished aluminum and polished G10. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about the Espada series, but primarily, I'm just going to be reviewing this knife. We will mention, briefly the stuff about the series because there's a lot of diversity in the series itself, but let's just take a second to look at this knife. Just kind of go over this right here. Very interesting knife. And I think it's safe to say, guys, regardless of, how I'll talk about how I feel in the review as the review goes on, this is a beautiful knife. We'll get into that later, but I just think that most of these design elements and just overall this design is just gorgeous. So yes, I'm giving a little bit away. Man, that does get some of those fingerprints on there. But okay, guys. All right, so let's do some size comparisons on the Espada large, and then we will talk about the specs, what I like, what I dislike, and something unique about the blade. So as I mentioned, we'll go over the Espada series just real quick, and then we'll move on to size comparison. So the Espada is kind of one of Cold Steel's flagship series. They come in two different versions in three different sizes. So you can get, actually just two different sizes now. They used to come in three, and we'll kind of talk about that here in a little bit. So they come in a large and an XL. They used to come in a medium. The medium was 3.5 inches on the blade and actually had thumb stud openers. The large is 5.5 inches on the blade, and the XL is 7.5 inches. That's right, on a folding knife. It's pretty crazy, but it's true. And the large and XL both have the thumb plate or the wave opening feature. They come in a G10 scaled option where it's just solid G10 scales, very similar to this Recon 1, obviously a lot bigger than that though, and AUS 10. And then they come in polished aluminum, polished G10 with S35 steel on them. Okay, all right, let's do some size comparisons. Then we'll talk specs, what I like, what I dislike, and something unique. So let's compare it to kind of a similar Cold Steel knife right here. Not as big, but kind of getting close to it, right? Cold Steel Spartan, both have that thumb plate opener right there. This is a 4.5 inch blade, pretty beefy blade, big blade, not quite as big as this guy though. An inch off on that versus there. This is a big knife though, but as you can see, this is even larger. Okay, let's compare it to, to give you an idea what a lot of people will carry, a solid knife you can pick up at like a hardware store or at Walmart or something like that. Kershaw Leek, good solid knife. Yeah, just a little bit smaller. Man, this thing is so cool. So yeah, that's this, and this is, this is nearly a full size. I guess you could call this a full size knife. You can get your full hand around it. It's got a 3-inch blade, more than perfectly adequate for most of the stuff you would want to do. Okay, let's do one more comparison, and let's compare it to probably kind of its cheap competition. No, this one isn't a joke. It's going to be like a fixed blade knife, right? As far as reach, you're honestly, if you kind of choke back on this handle, if you're using this in offensive purpose, you have more reach on this thing than you do on a knife like this. This is the Cold Steel Master Tonto in 3V. So that's going to be, I think, its chief comparison is kind of a fixed blade knife. So let's talk about the specs on this guy. So we are looking at, as I said, at a 5.5 inch blade made of S35. Overall, it is 12.25 inches. This is 70-75 aluminum, which I can't remember what it's most well known for. I don't want to say it's aircraft. It's something else. Anyway, apparently a very strong aluminum. Aluminum's relatively lightweight, but it's relatively soft. But apparently this is quite strong for aluminum. It's also made of polished G10, as we saw, and you can kind of see the big difference between something like this, how shiny that is. I mean, you can see the ring light above here in that versus something like this. This is actually sanded down too, but very, very different. So that's polished G10 and aluminum. The blade is 4 millimeters thick, quite thick for a Cold Steel knife, actually. And let's see what else. It is 9.9 ounces, actually, just 9 ounces overall. To pick one of these up, you're looking at, let's see. I picked this thing up for around 200. They go for a lot more, usually no less than 200. 200 is going to be probably the very bottom of the price range you're going to pick one of these up at. It's probably going to be closer to about 250 or so. And obviously it has that wave opener. So let's get into what I like. First of all, let me wipe this off again. Of course, that polish just really holds fingerprints, right? All right, what do I like? Well, I don't think that it has to be said that I like how just awesome the overall design of this is. Cold Steel is just one of those companies that they're not afraid to make these kind of awesome, insane looking fighting blades, and they're not afraid to do it with quality materials. 7075 aluminum, polished G10, triad locking mechanism, S35 steel, which is a premium steel. They do these crazy kind of mall ninja things, but they do them with high quality materials and they do them well. And that's what I adore about Cold Steel, is they just lean in to that kind of crazy, over the top, but well done designs. And I absolutely love that. And I think that this is probably the absolute peak of what Cold Steel can be. Maybe you could say it's the XL, but this is kind of indicative of peak Cold Steel. And I love it because I think it's awesome and it's well done. It's not done with cheap materials, which I really appreciate. The next thing I absolutely love is the overall design. I talked about that up top, but this is just a beautiful blade. With those bolsters, that polished aluminum, that polished G10, it's just, let's look at this thing real close. It's just very pretty. Closed, it has gorgeous features, very shiny. And then when you open this thing up, that they call it a clip point, and I guess it is a clip point. Because it is clipped on the top on their website, but it's almost trailing point in design. A lot of belly right there. This is a sharp, dangerous blade, so you got to be careful with this one. So I just think that overall, this is just absolutely fantastic. It's gorgeous. It's a beautiful design. And that moves on to the blade itself, which I adore. Not only is it beautiful, as I mentioned, it's just got a nice sweep to it. Nicely ground. It looks to be flat ground. Yeah, looks to be flat ground, but it's just also a very utilitarian blade. Not that you're going to be, opening boxes with this thing, though I did open a box with this today. But it's just, you can use this blade for just about whatever you wanted to. Yes, this is designed as a fighting knife. Could you use it outdoors? It's got the triad lock. It's got S35. Sure, if you really wanted to. This is designed as a fighting knife, and I have no doubt, you knife fighters in the comments, if you've practiced any sort of Kali or any other knife, hand-to-hand combat style things, you can comment in the comments and tell me if this would be effective. But I have no doubt that a long slashing blade with a lot of belly would be very effective in a martial task. Not only that, but there's just a lot of reach for a folding knife. So, you have an overall package that's relatively small, smaller than this, right? Good bit smaller than that. But when deployed, you just have a lot of reach. And so I think that this blade is amazing. Now, the G10 version, I could absolutely see someone carrying that if they don't want to carry a fixed blade knife, maybe in the woods. This, honestly, I know this is crazy, but this has a gorgeous profile for skinning. There's just a lot of belly to it. It's clipped upwards, so I think this would be a great skinning knife. Let me know if you've skinned an animal or done like food prep with your polished Espada. I would love to hear that. And I think that's awesome. If you just like a blade, go for it. Use it for whatever it would be effective at. That there's no issues with that at all. Don't let anyone tell you that there is. So I love this blade. The fit and finish overall is also very nice. There is one caveat that I will talk about and what I don't like, but the blade is ground nicely. Goodness gracious, this thing is sharp. Let's see, do I have any paper on my desk? Let me grab a sheet of paper just so I can show you how absolutely sharp this thing is. I mean, it's just, and this is thick paper, so it's not exactly the best example, but this is just, yeah, that grabbed a little bit, but this is very sharp. Like, it's ridiculously sharp. So I think that the fit and finish overall as well, along with, that sharpening out of the box, just fantastic. The polishing is nice. There's no sharp edges. Everything is rounded nicely. Of course, it's going to scratch relatively easily. It's going to fingerprint relatively easily. It's polished. You can see stuff. You can literally see me right there. Hello. And the polish right there. So yeah, I think the fit and finish is quite nice as well. So let me pull my notes back up. Here we go. Okay. All right. So another thing I absolutely love is the comfort of this handle. Now I have big hands, XL hands, right? I've told you guys this. I'll say it to you in case you're a new viewer. I have very wide hands, but not very long fingers. So I wear XL gloves, but usually the fingers are, a ½ inch too long on each finger. This right here in the choked up grip is incredibly comfortable, very comfortable, plenty of room for XL hands. Choking up right here, plenty of room. Choking back right here, for our martial arts fans, also plenty of room. And that divot right there, don't love finger grooves always, but that really locks you in and it's actually quite comfortable back there. So if you want to do any light chopping with this, this would be perfectly fine for that. So handle comfort, very, very nice. It's just about as comfortable as something like this Spartan, but you don't really have an option to choke back on this thing. With this, you do. There's also a lot more blade and handle length on that. So last thing I'll mention I like is the wave design. I like a waving knife. It does tear up your jeans a little bit, sure, but it's convenient. That's why people like to own autos and stuff like that. That grabbing on your pocket, for those of you who don't know, when you grab it like this, when you pull it out, your jeans or your pants or whatever you're wearing kind of grabs that and pulls out the blade. So I like that wave design. It's fun, it's efficient, and it's, especially for like a tactical blade, like a martial fighting knife like this, the last thing you want to do in, God forbid, an encounter where you have to use this thing is have that extra motion of having to flip it open with your thumb or whatever. So I just think that's very, very cool. Okay, let's move on to what I don't like. So there's only one thing, and it is a fit and finish issue. Yes, I do like the fit and finish overall. I think overall it is very, very well done. It's one of my liked points. But there is one issue, and I'm going to illustrate that to you guys right now. So the triad lock works like this. So it's a standard back lock. I'm gonna keep my hands out of the way of that blade. And so this bar right here locks into a divot in the blade, keeps it strong. The triad lock though, what it's known for is having this stop pin right here. So if anything's pushing against it, that's taking the brunt of the force. It makes it a really, really strong lock. This pin right here, I don't think I've ever had this issue on a cold steel knife. Listen to this. As you can see, yeah, you guys can see that. There is, micro millimeters of travel between the stop pin itself and the cutouts that go into the aluminum handle. So because it's not tight, because those tolerances aren't tighter, you're getting a little bit of that. Now, when it's closed, you don't hear that because the lock bar is kind of pressed against it, and I think it keeps it from moving. When it's partially open, you do hear that. When it's open, you don't hear it. So is it like a terrible fit and finish thing? No, there's not an enormous scratch on the blade. There's not, this is all done quite nicely. This is all fitted very nicely, actually. This G10, that's quite a bit of milling, and G10's a hard material to deal with when it comes to that stuff. So this is all very, very nicely done. It's just that little issue. I wish that was just, it's not an issue on, here we go. Let me show my Recon 1. You can hear that a little bit. Is that what that is? You know what? I might have solved the great riddle of what that shake is. But when it's closed, you just don't really have. Maybe you do. Okay. All right. Well, this may be a common cold steel issue that I just haven't figured out until now. Either way, I think that this pin is a little bit looser than others. So again, is it the end of the world? No. On a nearly $300 knife, doesn't sit super well with me. But because you don't hear it, when it's in your pocket, you don't really hear it right there. That's just the blade wobbling. You don't really hear it right here, right? Because it's pressed against there. I'm going to say it's not like a terrible thing, but it is something that I don't like. Okay, that's really all. So that moves us on to what is unique. I think that the cold steel Espada, and I've said this about other cold steel knives, but this is probably top tier peak cold steel. I don't think there's any knife that more recognizes the cold steel brand name, more kind of encompasses what they're about and what they do than an enormous Espada in just gorgeous polished aluminum and G10 and an S35. I think that this is what cold steel is, and this is what we cold steel fanatics, those of you who really like cold steel, this is what we love about cold steel, is knives like this. This really encompasses it. It's an expensive blade, but it's a gorgeous blade. And no matter what you're going to use it for, whether it be cutting tomatoes, skinning game, light chopping, I know it sounds ridiculous with a knife like this, or using it as a self-defense tool, I think it's going to function beautifully in any of those capacities. It's an absolute recommend, guys. It's just awesome to own. It's so cool. I absolutely adore this blade. I think it's just an amazing blade. So, guys, thanks so much for watching. Thank you for checking out the channel. Let me know what you want to see next in reviews. I'd love to hear your comments, what you guys think of the Espada series. We will see you in the next video. Peace.